And lastly, before we start, I am not claiming to be a Roll20 pro. I have been using this program for 3.5 months at the time of this recording, so this is definitely just a basics class. I'm sure at least one of you will ask a question that I don't have the answer to, in which case I will try my best to find it and respond in the Discord chat. So let's get started. With Roll20, once you log in, if you don't have any games, you won't see anything here, but it'll take you to this page, and then you go ahead and let's create a new game. Go ahead and call it Demo. You choose a character sheet. A lot of you said you like 5e, so we'll do that guy. And this is where you would pick a pre-generated module if you're using one. A really good free 5e one right now is Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. If you are not, then you're doing a homebrew. You just scroll all the way down. I'm ready, create game. Here you can drop a file or choose a file to upload, and it'll go ahead and be the banner that you saw on that home page for the game. You are playing 5e. The next game, you go ahead and click and you schedule day, time, specific time, save, and there you go. And then enter the description you want. Game add-ons here is stuff that you would have purchased in the marketplace. And I use a lot of Pathfinder stuff, so that's what I've got. Otherwise, it'll probably be empty. And this is the specific game forum. I like to post a summary after every session so that my players have the option of reading it before the next week, just so that they remember what happened. And then we've got looking for players. If you don't have specific players that you're going to be inviting to the game, you can create a listing. You put the system that you're doing, the story, and then you just post it publicly, and people can find it using a search, message you, and see if they can join the game. In settings, you've got general game settings, allow public access to the game, the background image, can players import their own characters, default settings for tokens and pages, compendium settings which compendium resources are available in game. We're using 5th edition. You can add other ones if you've purchased them. How many players you're sharing your compendium with. It goes over the sheet that you're using, specifics for the sheets. All of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory, and if it's not, Roll20 forum is a fantastic resource for specific questions, but since this is a basics class, I'm going to leave it there. So we go back to the homepage for the game. Next, settings, API scripts. You can go ahead and ignore this for now. This is a pro subscription level thing. There's a awesome library, I think they call it the sandbox, of pre-written API scripts that you can add to your game to just improve your game. And I might do a separate video for that, but we can ignore that for now. Copy game is a fantastic feature if you are planning on throwing API scripts in or creating a bunch of macros or making big changes to games and you're worried about messing up the whole thing. You copy the game, you leave it alone and mess with only the copy, and then you have a safe version that's still clean in case you mess anything up. Clear chat archive. You can do that in and outside of the game. I'll talk more about it once we get to the chat features. You can delete the game. If you click delete, it'll pop up a notification to make you type in the word delete. So Roll20 is pretty good about not accidentally deleting stuff. And then rollback game is pretty cool. It lets you go back as a last-ditch effort if something major gets messed up, to basically go back before your session started. Everything that got changed during the session will be wiped, and it only goes back I think 7 days. So it's usually something went wrong while I was prepping or something went wrong during the session. You can invite players. It will allow you to either enter email addresses if you know the specific people, or you can go ahead and share a link. All they have to do is create an account or have an account and then click that link, and they're automatically joined in as a player. Even if you want somebody who just like wants to see what Roll20 is like, or wants to watch the game but isn't ready to become a player, they can also click on that link and be like considered a player, and they'll be able to see the game and like be a part of the chat. They just won't have any like input because you won't give them any permissions or anything. And token marker sets, it generally comes with the default. If you purchased any other token marker sets, it'll either be there or you can add it in, just like the game add-ons. Alright, so launch game. First, we're going to create a map, because when you first enter a brand new game, there's nothing there. Let's do a map so that we can talk about all the other features. I'm just going to do something real quick and explain what I'm doing later. And then let's go down these tools. So select move, you have to have this picked for moving tokens, anything like that. If you're panning, when you grab the map, it'll just let you move the map around and do nothing else. Here are the different layers. So you go to the map background, and now you can actually change and mess with this map, which is only on the map layer now. If you go ahead and add accent pieces to the map, and mess with it on the map, that's fine. Then if you go to objects and tokens, you can start adding like villains, animals, stuff like that. And because we are now on the objects and tokens layer, you cannot touch anything on the map. I'm clicking, not getting anything, but I can move this horse. GM info overlay. Let's say this horse is a villain. You go into layer, you put it on the GM layer, and now it is a hiding horse that the players cannot see. That's why it went a little transparent. You go into GM info overlay layer, and now you can move it around. Do whatever you want with it. You can make it sneak up on the PCs, and then reveal it once it's where it is, or once the combat happens. Put it on the token layer, it'll pop back up again, and then you can't do anything anymore because you're on the GM layer, so you have to go back to objects and tokens. GM info overlay, the opacity, if you go ahead and put this on that layer, it goes a little opaque, right? If you change the opacity, it'll show you the stuff that's on the GM layer either more intensely or not at all. So that's an easy way. If like you have a pre-generated map and you're having trouble finding those tokens, it's usually because like the overlay is a little bit low. You just go ahead and pop it up and be like, okay, those are all the hidden tokens, and then go back down a little bit. The other layer is dynamic lighting. I'm going to go ahead and go into one of the pre-generated module maps to show you the dynamic lighting. This is a paid feature, but I am going to show it to you because it is a like really great reason to pay. It's like it alone is a great reason to become a subscriber. It makes everything so much cooler. So I'm just going to show you basics of it. So as soon as you go to the layer, you can see all of these blue and orange lines that have appeared, right? So the players can't see anything inside the rocks. They can't see anything inside these rooms that are dark. If there's like torches and stuff in the rooms, it'll be a little more lit. And those are the rooms that PCs, the players can see. These shadow lines are like line of sight kind of things, right? There's like a light source over here, but there's a rock here, so this is in shadow. So it's really, really cool. It makes it way more interesting to like explore the maps and discover things for the players. To edit the dynamic lighting, you make sure you're in the select move and go ahead and just select the door. The pre-generated maps, at least for Rise of the Runelords, which is what I'm using, The doors are really thin and they're very hard to grab. So I usually just select them and then delete it so that you see that it lit up a little bit because there's a torch here. And then I'll just Control Z to put it back instead of trying to move it in and out. But if I'm making dynamic lighting, then once you're on the dynamic lighting layer, you go to the next lower menu option, Polygon line. So you can use like orange, the same color as them or whatever. I try to use like bright colors. And we'll create a door. The line, it should be like at least regular. I just like bump it up large, extra large, whatever. You click once, click on the spot where you want it to go to, and then I got this tip from online. You do another one. It's called a flag. It just makes the door like easier to see, easier to grab. But yeah, so if you're making your own rooms, I definitely suggest using thicker lines for doors. If you're going to do a wall, then you're going to want to go to like small or thin to pick a different color, another bright color, whatever, and pick a different like bright color, and then you can start like closing in areas and rooms and stuff. So you start in the corner that you want, you just build it and build it and build whatever shape you want, and then you close it off. It'll change color a little bit, it'll be a little dimmer, and this is an enclosed space now, and unless there's a light source in there, the players cannot see within it. So it's really easy to add dynamic lighting to your rooms, your own custom maps that you've made, pre-generated maps, and the way that you make sure that dynamic lighting works is you just go into the map settings for it, and it should be checked. Next one down, let's see, draw shape. You go ahead and make boxes, like predefine sizes, regular. Again, those line sizes, you can change the outer box color, the fill color, do whatever you want. And then we've got freehand. Alright. And then we've got the polygon line will always, you just automatically one spot to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next until you close it. And then text. It'll probably be a little hard to see here. But you click, and it's really hard to edit text after you already type it. So as soon as you start a text box, go in here, choose the font you want, the size you want, the color you want, and then go ahead and start typing. Alright, make sure you go back into select move when you are trying to move your text around. And then if you mess up or you want to go back or whatever, you can clear drawings, you clear all the drawings on the map at once. If you only want to collect certain, if you only want to delete certain ones, then just select them and press delete. Next guide down is like magic effects. Magic user is shooting a beam of acid. You select the starting point, the caster, and then where it's going to. They're attacking this horse. It's just a fun little effect for the map. There's tons of them, bombs, just tons of options, different types, different colors. It's just like a fun little effect. Then there's the zoom option. The preset zooms. There's more zoom options over here on the upper right. Okay, so snap to center. If you're doing 5e or Pathfinder, something like that, that movement and measurement matters when you're in combat, you can click snap to center and go from the horse, and it'll tell you 20 feet, 30 feet. It does diagonal as well, and depending on the map settings, it will tell you in like Pathfinder where like the first one is 5 feet and the second one is 10 feet and stuff like that. This is the one that catches my players all the time. They go to this setting to see if they can move, and then they try to pick up their token and move, but you're stuck. So again, if you do anything in a map, you have to go back to select and move up here. And yeah, you can show to others, you can hide from others if you're planning secret movements, whatever. This is for Fog of War. Dynamic lighting is the pro version of, shadows and revealing stuff to your players. Fog of War, not the advanced Fog of War, just the basic Fog of War, is the free version. So for this, you go and you start with hide areas, and you select as much of it as you want, and now you can see it's in shadow. Your players can't see anything anymore. Reveal areas, you can reveal small areas, certain areas, it gets a little bit better. And same with the polygon, you click to click different areas, and then you can hide them again, or you can reset the fog for the whole screen. I'm going to go ahead and reveal the whole thing just so it's not so dark for us. Alright, then we get to the turn order tracker, initiative tracker. This just lets you and your players keep track of whose turn it is in combat. You can add to it multiple ways. I will talk about them when we create characters and tokens. And this is just a table of dice to roll. You can click how many you want to roll or the type, and it'll just toss it into the chat for you. And then this is the help section. You click on this, it'll open external links for you to try to find information to help out with Roll20. Alright, so that is this area, the map settings page. Up here, you click on that, and page size, I tend to change that with like the actual squares so I can see it while I'm doing it. If you're not using a background map, you can change the actual color that you want it to be. Usually the grid cells are 5 feet each, but if you're doing like a giant map and you want them to be 10 foot each, something like that, that's fine. You can disable or enable the grid, squares or hex, depending on the system you want to use, measurement, D&D or Pathfinder, anything you want. Well, those 4 options. The cell lists, a lot of the token and artwork you're going to find is used to a 70 by 70. So unless you have to, you generally want to keep this 70 by 70. The opacity and the color are the grid lines. So if you have like a white map and you want to make them like super obvious, just fill it out all the way. So you can change that in there, and then Fog of War is enabled because that's the free one, and that was what I was showing you guys before. Advanced Fog of War and Dynamic Lighting are the paid versions. If you are doing like a pre-generated module or making your own map, actually, it doesn't really matter. If you are doing like Fog of War and you're messing around with it and something weird happens and your players can't see the map, this is one of the places I check first to make sure that the correct lighting is checked, because if you set up a map using Fog of War and somehow dynamic lighting gets checked, it will like override it and it'll just be black to the players. With dynamic lighting, you want to restrict movement for sure so that players can't accidentally end up in walls. Sometimes it'll show them the whole map if they do that. Sometimes they'll just get like lost and it'll just be black. This is where it'll show you how dark or light, like the dark and lit areas of the map makes it a little easier to see for you. And then we'll get into this option in a little bit. Pre-made maps. So if we've got pre-made maps, like this is Rise of the Rune Lords, it comes with a ton of maps. Also comes with a token page. It's a super awesome module. You have this same, similar settings, a couple other options. You can archive a page. So if it's like maps that you've done in the beginning of the game that you're probably not going to use again, and you don't want to have to scroll through 50 maps every time you want to get to one, you can archive it. If you're for sure done with it, you're never going to use it again, you can delete it. Another helpful thing with, especially with like pre-generated modules, is navigating maps in the bar. So you can hold and click and drag a map so that you can change the order that you want. It is a little daunting when you want to change, like, for example, when you create a new page, it creates it at the very end. And if you want it at the very beginning, you have to drag it all the way there. I'm not going to make you sit through that. So you can drag and drop wherever you want. Changing a title of a map, you don't have to go into the settings to do that. Just click on the name and then make sure you press enter when you're done, and it'll just do that for you. So we've got the chat tab. Every time you log into Roll20, this will show up. This link at the top will let you see all chat entries for the entire game. It's crazy. It logs everything unless you specifically clear it. The player link for the campaign will be hidden. You can copy that, so you'll never lose it. You can always add more players into the game, halfway through the campaign. It doesn't matter. And then there's just some awesome tips from Roll20 about basic stuff you can do in the chat. General chat functions, just all of the players will see that. It'll show you that your name and that you're like the GM, or if you're in as a player, it'll show player. I'll show you guys how to be players in a second. And then a great way to whisper to, sorry, I have to be in a game with players. So /W and then just start typing a name. Only Randy will see this message. And it's a different color than the rest of them. It's yellow instead of blue, which shows you that it worked. You can do hidden roles as a GM. So again, like all of these formulas are right here. And like most functions with Roll20, there are like unlimited numbers of formulas. The internet is your friend if you're looking for something specific. One of my players really enjoys formulas, and he has like super complicated ones for all of his roles. He likes using them more than his character sheet. Totally cool, but definitely not something I'm going to cover in the basics class. Alright, the next one is the art tab. So when you first go to the art tab, unless you're searching, it'll show you this, the premium assets. These are things that you've either purchased yourselves, or because I'm a subscriber, I get some of these. And then these are free assets that everybody gets. So they're just tokens that you can throw on your map. And then if you upload your own artwork, you can go under my library, and it'll be the same kind of thing where you can just use it as a token or a map background. If you're looking for specifically like a map or an accent, you can click that option. It'll tend to give you better quality maps and stuff like that, tokens, bad guys, animals, player characters, stuff like that. The search function, you can look for anything you want, and it'll show you stuff that you have in your library that you've uploaded. It'll show you stuff from the subscription sets. Premium assets you can purchase if you want to will be in yellow, and you can buy things in game, but I generally have to exit the game and come back before they show up in my library, so a little daunting if you're in the middle of a session. And then free stuff from the web. When you drop a token, you just click and drop it on the map, and it'll just appear there on the map. If it's like whatever. If you want to drop it and you don't want it to align to a certain grid, it's the same thing as the map. Just hold the Alt button down while you drag it, and it won't resize, and it'll show up wherever you want it to, and it won't care about the grid at all. Making a token library for like helpful tokens that you use a lot. Let's say one of your players is a druid and they have a couple favored wild shapes, stuff like that. You can add those into the journal entries, and I'll show you how to do that once we get there. But it's a really, really, really good idea to have like a general, I just label it like GM token journal entry. I keep my torches in there, stuff like that you don't have to make like every session that you're going to use every now and then. And I will show you how to do that once we get to the journals. Okay, so in a new game, your journal tab will be completely empty. in another game with lots of characters and wild shapes and story entries if you're using a pre-generated module. It'll be super full. The circles over here mean that everyone can see these. These ones are only specific players. This is me and the druid. Okay, so the first thing you can do in a journal is add a character. They'll do some like random name. You can obviously change it to whatever you want. And the players that you'll see, let's go ahead and do this in this guy just so that we can show you how to... Alright, so in the players' journals, it'll pop up a register of all of your different players, and these are who will just see it in the journal. It'll just even appear. This is not giving them any kind of control or anything like that. So generally with characters, I put it in everybody. If it's like a bag of holding that one person has, I'll just put it in their journal. No one else has to like look at it for no reason. And then can be edited and controlled by. I always mark myself because sometimes I go into the game as a player just to make sure stuff is working well for them, and I still want to be able to change stuff when I'm doing that. So, but it's not necessary because as a GM, if you're only going to be a GM, you have control over everything. So you don't have to give yourself permission every time. And then you can select 1 or 2 or 3 characters to have control over, or players to have control over the character. That does not mean that they can do this page. They can't edit it and change the controls and stuff like that. They can just edit their character sheet. So this is bio and info. This will show up once you save it, and I'll show you that in a second. Anyone that can see it in their journal can see the bio and info information. Nobody except for you, even if they have control over the character, can see the GM notes. So you can put whatever you want in here. For the avatar, that is what is over here on the left side next to the journal entry. You can either drag art from the library and let it load there, or you can just click on the upload option and do it straight from your computer. So when you're creating a character, like a player character, and you know that you're always going to use the same token, you go ahead and you select it, and then you click use selected token. It'll autofill it for you, and then let's go ahead and save changes. So the artwork will show up there, that bio and info will show up there, and then down here under this line, again, only visible to you. I'll go ahead and close this. So now in your journal, you have this name, and because you selected that token, if you drag and drop it onto the map, it'll always just pop up that token automatically. You only have to click on it once for it to pop open, and this is how you get back in there to edit it. This button's usually on most like characters, handouts. If you show it to, it'll just pop up on every single player's screen, and they'll have to look at it no matter what they're doing. So again, there are duplicate, archive, and delete options. So when I am gonna mess with a character, or sometimes Roll20 gets glitchy, and like once I couldn't drop spells into a character sheet, I just wouldn't take it for some reason. I looked it up online, and the suggestion was to duplicate the character sheet, and when it copied over, it got rid of whatever weird glitch was suddenly happening, and I could drop the spells in there, and then I deleted the original character sheet. So if something weird is happening on a character sheet, that's a good thing to try. If you want to duplicate it just to have a backup for, like, let's say your characters are leveling their characters, and you know, they just want to back up in case they mess up while they're leveling, that's great. If you duplicate, it will appear at the very bottom of the journal under everything else, and it'll always say copy of. You can archive if you don't want to fill up your journal, but you might eventually need that character, and if you delete it, it'll ask you to confirm. Let's go back into the demo since you guys wanted 5e. The first time you enter a character sheet, it'll pop up this option. You can edit sheet directly, and then you'll, you know, once you get the basic like class information, it'll already start to fill stuff out for you. If we change it to level 5, the proficiency bonus already goes up. So a lot of this stuff is automated. I personally play Pathfinder a lot. I just wanted to show you guys what the 5e character sheet looks like. But generally, this is editable by you and the character that you've given permission to. There are some things that only you can do, like these lock bars. If you unlock them, you can like delete items or reorganize them in a list or order. The players can't do that, so sometimes they'll ask you to do that for them if they accidentally have an entry or something like that. Let's see. There are the different areas, you know, you can just type whatever you want in there, and then its own spells tab as well. You know, the levels that they're at, how many per day that you get, the DC, all of this stuff is in here. And the settings, so you can change the actual, like the base ability scores. When they roll, do you want them to always roll with advantage? Do you want only the GM to see them? Do you want everyone to see their rolls? Stuff like that. Like, it's all in here. I have a pretty detailed video about how to level a Pathfinder character sheet. I might look into doing a 5e one, but like at least the character sheets, especially for 5e, it's like really well integrated in Roll20. It's pretty self-explanatory, and Roll20 forums are like super great at answering any specific questions you might have. In some character sheets, there are, so like you can edit the wisdom by like a certain amount, whatever, right? You just put a new number in it, it'll autofill the modifier for you. But then you can also go in the settings to like add notes about like why, like what magical item is giving you that bonus, stuff like that. Also, if a number doesn't make sense to you, you can go ahead and open that settings gear and it will pop it open and like explain where all those numbers are coming from, and then you can find how to change those numbers on different tabs. Pathfinder is one of the more complicated character sheets because it's one of the more complicated systems. But that settings gear, again, will just kind of like always give you the breakdown and give you like more power usually to change stuff than the players. When you click on anything in a character sheet in Roll20 that lights up, it will roll automatically in the chat. So like you don't actually have to type in a roll command for pretty much anything if you don't want to. Anything you click and it'll label it. It's pretty great with spells as well, especially if it's one that is in the Compendium, because it'll have all the details in there, spell resistance, saving throws, everything. And if it's something that rolls dice, it will roll it for you as well. And that is a super helpful thing to make sure that your players know the first time they play, so they don't get overwhelmed with having to type out the roll dice command, you know, a bunch. Creating an NPC. So if you're not creating a player character, go back into the journal, delete that guy, add another character, save the changes, go to the character sheet, and this time you click create an NPC. It is a completely different formatted type of sheet. And it looks like it's actually pretty similar between 5e and Pathfinder, that with NPC sheets there's one gear. It's not like all editable. You click on the gear and it becomes like the entirety of it is editable or not. And it'll show you all of the details, and then it'll show you what it looks like once you're changing it down here. It's the same in Pathfinder. This is an NPC. It's up here next to the name. Once you click it, then you can get in and edit stuff. Otherwise, you can only click on stuff to roll. You can't edit it in here. With Pathfinder, at least, there's this one main one, and then with the attacks, they're also separate. With 5e, it looks to be just like one settings for everything. Okay, the next step. So, adding handouts. Pretty self-explanatory. You name whatever you want the note to be. If you want all of the players to see it, so like a lost note or like a secret note or something that people find on a body after a fight, or like a letter that gets sent to a specific player. So everyone's or a specific person can be edited by. Generally, I leave this just to me, but sometimes, like if a player wants to do a group inventory handout and they want to make it list, you can do that person or all players, whatever. This is just a picture. If you want, like, the bag of holding note is like a pile of gold in that one. Oops, sorry. Again, description and notes, it'll appear to everybody, and GM notes will only appear to you. Same, duplicate, archive, delete the handout. Once you pop it open, let me show you a better one. There we go. So in pre-generated modules, they'll offer a lot of handouts. And again, you can show to players. It'll confirm to you. It didn't, because there's no players in here except for me, but it'll ask to confirm if you want to show it to all of the players, and they'll see the picture and the text, and then they won't see the GM notes. So that is handouts. And then folders. You can create a folder, and it'll basically just like help you organize a little bit. The journal system isn't like super great in Roll20, but it is helpful. So it'll automatically do it for characters and handouts, but if you want to create a second or whatever folder, you have to click on these 3 horizontal lines and hold them down and then drag it underneath, and you'll know that it's in that folder if it's indented. If you subtract it, it hides it. If you don't click on those 3 lines, you can still move it, but it won't stick wherever you put it. So you have to make sure you click on those 3 lines and drag it wherever you want it. So right click on characters, you can show to players, archive and delete, so you don't have to open it. And it'll ask you to confirm again with that too, if you want to delete a character or anything, which is one really annoying feature in Roll20. If you right click on something and you want to delete it, you have to confirm for every single item. So if you have like 15 files that you want to delete, you have to do each one by one. And if you, like me, think, oh, I'll just delete a whole folder because I don't need anything in here. If you delete the folder, it will just dump everything back into the main like journal entry. And so you just have like 10 loose files in there instead. There's a forum on Roll20 right now to vote for the dev team to like fix that and add an ability to like mass delete things right now. It's definitely not in Pathfinder, and I can't find it in like most pre-generated modules. It seems to be an option in here, which is pretty cool. But I'm gonna put a link to that forum in the Discord chat because it's super important. It'd be a really great feature for GMs to be able to delete multiple things at once. Then we have the Compendium tab. So whatever system you're using, it'll have books, rules, pre-generated characters, different spells, feats, items, everything's in here. For Pathfinder, they only have the core rulebook stuff. So sometimes when you search for stuff, it's not there and you have to add it manually. But 5th edition has probably most of its stuff because it's so well integrated in Roll20. So let's see. We want an animal. Alright, it'll pop up monsters as the category and show you the different options you have. And then if you drag an item onto the map from the compendium, it will pop this up first and also automatically give it an entry in the journal. And where did it go? Let me see. Give you like a default avatar as well. If you want to make it editable, like let's say you're making an animal companion or something like that, it's really important to make it editable by the character or by the player that you want first, and then save it, and then you can mess with this. As soon as you start messing with this, if you haven't given permission to a character, if you haven't given permission to a player first, once you start editing it, that goes away, and you cannot give that like a player permission anymore. So make sure that you give a permission first before you start messing with NPCs. The Compendium is also super great for dropping spells and items onto character sheets. So go ahead and find a spell that you want, just drop it right on, and it'll add it to whatever spell slot is correct. If it is like a first level spell for wizards but a second level spell for bards, stuff like that, it will ask you which level you want first. So that's pretty helpful. And because it's from the Compendium, cast at, it'll automatically appear in the chat with all of the details. So pretty dope. There should be items that you can add as well. Drop that, and now there you go, Boots of Elvenkind right there. Click on that, and there's a little bit itty bitty info button here. Whether it's equipped, if it has an attack, then you can start editing that info in there too. What type of information, and then right here is the description for what you get for wearing it. Alright. So yeah, so spells, items, anything. If you search an animal or something like that, and you drop an entire like entry onto a character sheet, it will take it over and turn it into an NPC with the same name that you already selected and the same like player controls and all that kind of stuff. It'll just change all of the information and the format to an NPC. If you want to keep your game inside Roll20 as much so that you're not like switching between different applications or whatever, there are like a ton of rules in here, but in general, especially once you have like 5 players in here, it tends to take a little bit of time to load. So like up to you, but I generally have my rulebooks open in different tabs ready to go. Then we go to the Jukebox tab. So with the Jukebox tabs, the first thing you're going to do is go into Manage Audio. It'll bring you to the playlist page. You can either create a new playlist, or go into tracks, and you can upload your own media. I would suggest that in general what they have is like, it's like good for like vague background sounds, but if you ever need anything specific, I have had a lot of trouble finding it from what they have to offer. So let's see. Alright, if you add to the playlist, you can add to a new playlist, or you can add to the game in general. It'll show up there. And then see here under demo, you got the song. Let's close that out. Okay, so once you have a song or whatever you want, you can either play, and then it will play just in general in the session. Everyone that has audio coming from their computer can hear it. You can loop it so that it continues for the entire session. Change the volume. I suggest never starting higher than like a quarter, because I've had players complain before that it's just like overwhelmingly loud when they start the game session. The menu, fade in, fade out, delete, self-explanatory. Clicking on this cloud button will bring you to an external link where that file can be found. And it's the same as the journal. You can drop it into this playlist or its own entry. And a pretty cool option, when you're making a map, you can go into the settings, and whenever you load a particular map, like a cave, you can have the cave music going. Okay, the collection tab. So when you start a new game, it'll be pretty empty. For macros, it's basically like a shortcut that lets you do a bunch of actions in one. with macros, we're starting to get outside my wheelhouse a little bit, but I will include links to tutorials because there are some super dope things you can do with macros, and like a ton of like pre-written macros on the Roll20 forums that you can just copy paste into your game. But in like a pre-generated module, there are a ton. So I will click one to show you what they do. So Cities Magnamar Marketplace. If I put it in bar, it'll appear down here in the left corner, and when I roll it, in the chat, it'll show me, okay, today the Magnamar Marketplace has this many minor magical items, and it has this much money to be able to like purchase things from. It'll do all of those like random stuff for you. And you can just take it out. After macros, you've got decks. It'll start with a default game of just like 54 playing cards. So you can change if the players can see it, if they can draw their own cards, is it infinite? All of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory, and it'll also show you all of the cards in the list. This is super cool if you want like a deck of many things. That's a thing you can purchase in the marketplace and add to your game, or you can make your own. And then rollable tables for like random encounters, or like dungeons where, you know, if you enter it, there's a chance of confusion and stuff like that. You just click on roll, and it'll do all the shit for you, and just tell you like this is the rumor that they heard, so you don't have to decide. So that is the rollable tables, and finally the settings tab. So clearly exit game, rejoin as player. I'll show you how to do it in here because it'll actually like there will be content for you to see. It'll reload everything. One thing is if like you have a bunch of character sheets out and stuff that you're looking at, if you rejoin or you exit and enter, it'll take all of those away and you have to reopen them all again. So if you've like prepped and set up your screen a bunch, then you like exit, you have to do all that work again. So keep that in mind. So I've rejoined it as a player. Currently on this page, I, Elisa, don't have any like ability to see anything because I'm not in control of any of the tokens or anything like that. So if one of your players is having problems, go to their token, give yourself permission to see it, and then join as a player, and it'll help you troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. All right. Other settings. The display name is what they see in the chat. The master music volume, the master music volume is for the jukebox options. Advanced keyboard shortcuts. So if you're not like me and you can remember all of the cool shortcuts that Roll20 has, there are a ton that help you move around when you're doing maps and dynamic lighting and opening the different tabs, and the list is all here. Pretty easy to find, that little eye. And you just check that off. Okay, window pop-outs are great if you like want to see the map and your character sheet totally off to the side and not covering the map at all. However, window pop-outs pretty consistently cause problems for some reason. When I have characters using window pop-outs for character sheets, when I have players using window pop-outs for character sheets, they like break almost all the time. They suddenly can't control them, they can't roll something in the chat, and as soon as they close it and just open it like not a pop-out, not something you can drag out of the actual window, it's fine. So go ahead and try them if you want to, but if there's a problem, it's probably because it's popped out. Enable background chat beep. So if you're looking in a journal for something specific while your players are chatting or rolling something, it'll make a noise, and it'll also make a noise if you're like on a different internet, if you're on like a different tab. So that's helpful. So the different dice options, the 3D dice are like cool, but it takes up bandwidth and it gets kind of silly after a while. It'll just roll it on the screen and show you like the number that it lands on, and like it is fun. But yeah, so oops. Oh. And chat avatars are just like, you know, I have specific artwork for my background. There you go. So that'll pop up there. It just takes up a little bit of room, but you know, it's nice. Timestamps, blah, blah, blah. It's all self-explanatory. Okay, using the scroll to either zoom or pan. So right now I'm zooming, and this will just go up and down now. I can't zoom anymore unless I use the one of the two zoom features up here in the right corner or over here on the left menu. Here's the clear current chat log if it's just getting too long or whatever. There you go, and it'll also ask you to confirm it as well. Alright, game settings. So I'll do this in a second when I go over tokens. This will change the default deck size, chat avatars. So that will disable so that like people will just type and you won't necessarily see like that I'm the one that typed a thing. I leave that open because it gets confusing. Down here on the left, you see the player video avatar size. That's regular, large, names only, and you can see down here this blue bar that's appearing. That's showing me that my mic is being picked up by Rolll20. You can turn your video off just by clicking the camera. You can turn your sound off, and it'll go that you can only be heard in the chat. No, only read in the chat. You can turn both off. And if you're having any issues, you can click the reconnect to see if it helps. You can change the location of the videos, and like if you don't like what you changed it to, that changes it back to the default. Okay, so Rolll20 has a chat deck. It's cool that it's part of the system, and if all of your players have really great bandwidth and you're all connected via Ethernet cables, go for it. Then you don't have to have a secondary video system. It takes up a ton of bandwidth though, so if any of your players have like normal bandwidth, it will probably not work for them, and some of your other players won't be able to see them. The first thing that fixes that is if you're using Chrome or Firefox. Chrome or Firefox are suggested. They're the only things that Rolll20 web chat tech is actually like supported on. So if you have issues with like Internet, Explorer or Edge or whatever, like you're not likely to find solutions for troubleshooting. Chrome and Firefox, there are tons. Chrome is better than Firefox. I had like half my players on Firefox. They all switched to Chrome, and we could see everybody. If you are switching to like Discord, you can go ahead and just click none, and it will completely turn it off. It'll reconnect the entire game for you. Again, losing anything that you might have up, so be careful if you do that. And then you will not see a picture or microphone anymore, and it'll significantly decrease the bandwidth of your game. And then all those options will go away. Tokens. Also, if you right-click on a map, you can pan. Alright, so tokens. When you open up, when you just click on it once with your main click, your left click, 3 bubbles will show up. I have my players set it to the red because red is health, I don't know, is their hit points, and the right is their AC, so that I don't have to ask them what their AC is every time. I can just click on their token and see it right there. You go ahead and you click on the settings, and it'll pop it up, and this token represents a specific character, a character sheet that we have created. So now that it's totally connected, I can go in here and select that this is specifically connected to hit points. This is specifically connected to AC. And now, if I change them in here, -10, he got hurt a little bit, it will reflect in his actual character sheet that that is his current hit points. So you don't have to open up your character sheet every single time you get hurt if that's like the only change that you're making. Other things you can edit, if you get like a radius blessing or spell or debuff or something cast on you, you can go ahead and select aura, save, and it'll show you, you know, if anyone's in this radius, they also get these buffs, whatever. You can change the color, you can change how big it is, you can make it square if you want to, and you can have up to 2 on one character at a time. You can tint the entire like actual token if you want to. Alright, and again, things that only you know about the token. Alright, so then you go into the advanced tab. This is where the players that have permission to edit it can either edit or only see different things. And this emits light section is super important. So if a player has Darkvision, then they can see 60 feet because they are mechanically in Roll20 emitting their own light because they can see in the dark for 60 feet. The other players cannot see their light. They're the only ones that can see the 60 feet because they have Darkvision. If it's like a torch that you're creating, let's see, torches do 20 feet of bright light and 20 feet of the next down. So you would do 40 feet and then you would do 20 feet and all players see it. So now for 20 feet out, it becomes bright light and the next 20 feet starts to dim. It's in a perfect circle, like normal light, and all players can see it. So it becomes like a torch or something like that. Has sight, your tokens will not be able to see anything unless this is selected. This is the first thing I check if a player says, I can't see the map. Sometimes when you copy tokens over from map to map, stuff gets messed up, so I always check and make sure that it has sight. If they have low light vision, you change the multiplier from 1 to 2. That means that they can see twice as far in light than like normal humans. And advanced fog of war I haven't messed with because I use dynamic lighting. Let me go ahead and actually show you how this works. So this is a dungeon that is dark in certain rooms. See who has Darkvision. Where's Grimy? Grimy, there we go. Alright, Grimy has Darkvision. So a cool trick to see what your players see is to select the token and press Control L. You can only see what the player sees now. He has Darkvision. There's no torch in this room, but he can see the entire room. When you're done trying to see what they can see, click anywhere else on the map that isn't a token, and it will show you the GM view again. If I put the human in a dark room without a torch, nothing. If I add this torch token, which super helpful, definitely create a couple of these, and like dancing lights if you have spellcasters in your group, stuff like that, and put that in your journal folder titled GM tokens, and have them ready to just drop on the map whenever you need them. Now that I have a torch in here, he can see. So global illumination when you're using dynamic lighting means the sun is out and you're outside so they can see everything. If you're in a dungeon or it's nighttime, unclick it and they won't be able to see anything. Only update on drop is also really helpful for dynamic lighting because it means that if someone picks up their token and starts moving it through the map and they like, go through a few squares of a room that they shouldn't be in to get to a room that they can be in, it won't show them that room until they put the token down. It's also helpful for bandwidth because it doesn't like constantly stream and update the map while they're moving. So I usually have that checked. So I turned off the light, so basically it'll be dark on this map now. So again, let's pick this human. Can't see anything. Let's go. Tossing it on the map. Now, the human can see 20 feet of bright light and 20 feet of dimmer light around the torch. To create a torch, you start in the art, search for torch, find an image that you like. Oop, nope, no premium assets. Find an image that you like. I tend to go for things that are like clear. Some people like the bird's eye view of like characters where it's like their head and maybe their shoulders. And while it's more realistic, it's really hard to read on maps. So I tend to go with these portrait tokens. So go ahead and find a torch that you like, drop it onto the map, go into journal, add a character named torch. Go ahead and make sure that it is in all players' journals and can be edited and controlled by everybody. And then make sure that you have the token selected. You select a token, save changes, great, close it out, and then go into edit for the token, represents character, torch. And that means that it'll have the abilities and permissions that you gave the character sheet, so all of the players should be able to see it and should be able to move it. Go into advanced, 40 feet, and then it starts to do dimmer light after 20 feet. All players see light. You don't need to select has sight for torches because torches can't see, but also in general for NPCs, like you don't need to select this because as a GM, you can see everything all the time. And if all of your NPCs have sight, then you're just taking up bandwidth for no reason. Save changes, and then go ahead and add a folder called GM Tools, and then drop the torch inside of it. Again, GM Tools is a great folder to have for like torches, dancing lights, favorite animal companion tokens, stuff like that. Another thing about tokens, so you've got the settings on the left. You also have this like circle inside a circle button. Pop this open and you can put a ton of symbols for like if it's buffed or hurt or whatever, and it'll go in the upper right corner of the token. It's pretty small, so like some of these aren't super helpful unless you're really zoomed in on the map, which like generally you won't be. But the one that I like definitely favor is this big X. I use it to help my players know who is like dead or out, unconscious, out of the combat. I kind of did it earlier when I was messing with the character sheet, but a pretty cool feature about these bubbles is if you click on the number you want to change and you just type like -10 enter, it'll do the math for you. So you don't have to like subtract and stuff. If you get hurt for 12 points, you get healed for whatever. And see, so I got hurt by 10 and I added 12 back, and then here in the right corner, I'll zoom in a little bit more. Now there's a plus sign there. That's telling you have more than your total hit points. One annoying feature about this is sometimes if you're not careful, if you don't hit the minus or plus, and you just type the number in, it'll just change the value to that number. So you do have to like watch out for that. But yeah, if that's connected to a character sheet, it'll just update for you. And in theory, any token that is also connected to that character sheet will change its hit points as well. Which is why in pre-generated modules, like these goblins, they're specifically not connected to the character sheet, because if this goblin gets hurt, then it'll change the hit points for all the other goblin tokens that are connected to that character sheet. So you don't want that. You don't want to connect generic NPC tokens to character sheets. But it's really helpful for player characters, because when you do the next thing I was going to show you guys, which is select a bunch of tokens by doing Shift and then selecting all the tokens you want. So I'm going to bring all of the PCs with me to the next map. So you select them all, Control C, go to the map you want to toss them into, Control V. Sorry, let me zoom out a little bit. You have to like click on the map once before you do Control V, and then they'll all appear in whatever way that you selected them on the last map. And when they move over there, let's say like before session, you toss them into that map because you know that during the session you're gonna go to this map and you want to make a quick transition. You don't have to worry that like it'll stay where she only has 5 out of 12 hit points. As she fights and heals on different maps, it will change that on this map as well. It is good to check though, because what happens a lot for me at least is they'll fight on one map, heal overnight, and not change their tokens because they're like, I'm resting, whatever. And then we go on to the next map and they're at like half health. So before you start an encounter on a new map, I always check with my characters or my players and just like make sure that their bubbles are correct. Some random tips for tokens. Other than the holding the shift down to select specific tokens, if you know you want all of the tokens in an area, you can just drag a box over it and it'll select everything. You can move the whole thing. We did the Control L to make sure that you can see what your player sees. It's a really good way to troubleshoot. So like if a player says like I can't see the map, it's just black, my general troubleshooting for it is I click on their token, I do Control L. If I can see the map from their token, it's usually something weird on their end. And what helps me, like what fixes it for me 98% of the time, is I go up here, I swap the ribbon to another map for a couple seconds, and put it back here, and then they can see the map. I don't know why, but that's what the internet said, and it fixes it for me almost all of the time. If I press Control L and I also cannot see the map, then the next thing that I do is I check the token settings and make sure that in advance that they have sight, and if they're in a dark room that they have Darkvision. Sometimes my troubleshooting mind skips over things, so like my human will constantly tell me that he can't see anything, and I'll be like, oh god, the token's broken. And then I go in here and I'm like, no, right, he doesn't have Darkvision, of course you can't see anything. And then if all those settings are correct, and they still can't see anything, the next thing that I do is check the map settings to make sure whatever lighting effect I used to create the map is the one selected. If not, it'll just mess everything up. So map settings and make sure that it's the correct light. If all three of those things don't help, the final solution that I've had to do, and by this time I've always fixed it, so I don't know what the next step is if it doesn't work after this, is I delete the token completely and drag a new one on from their character sheet onto the map, and then they can see it. I gave you a rundown of that because it happens multiple times every single session for some reason. Okay, rolling initiative. So when you roll initiative with token, you pop up in the character sheet and then roll initiative. You just click on it. Not only will it roll it in the chat, it will automatically fill in and update it in the turn order track. If you don't click on the token first and you roll initiative, it will only show it in the track. I'm sorry, it will only show it in the chat, and you will have to update manually in the turn order, and sometimes it won't be visible to the player. I don't know why, but if they don't select their token first, sometimes they can't see it in the turn order track. When you want to move a token without it aligning to the grid, all you have to do is press Alt when you drag it. I mean, generally you want them to align to the grid, but if you have like a small character, One of my players is like pretty OCD, and they hate that their small character always automatically clicks to the left of the grid. So if you click Alt, you can place your small character in the center of the square. Another thing with tokens, so like this character has this familiar, the scorpion. Because it's tiny, it hides behind his token. So if you click on the bigger token and you send it to the back, then you'll always see the tiny scorpion, and you can select both of them at the same time and move them together. Super helpful for players to not have to move token and token and token. If you right click on your token, the first thing you can add a turn. That'll add them to the turn order track. If you don't do that, they won't be on it at all. They definitely won't see it. You won't see it. You can't click edit because you have to go into the settings. Like, I literally can't click this right now. I don't know why it's an option on the menu. You can delete the token, copy the token, blah blah blah, send it to the front or the back. Advanced, you can permanently group a token with another token so that they'll always move together. You can set the dimensions, because when you resize a token, it will resize to the grid. It'll automatically like fill to the next box size. So if you want to set a specific dimension, you have to go in and set the actual dimensions, and then it will listen to you. You can also do a shortcut where you press Alt and resize it, and it'll resize it freely for you. And then the layer, we've already done a couple times, where you can change them to being the map layer, the token layer, or the GM layer. GM layer, again, your players won't be able to see anything on that layer. Map layer, you won't be able to touch it unless you're editing the map. Random non-token tips. You can ping on the map. So like, if a human is in utter darkness and is like, oh my god, I can't see anything, where is everybody? I have them, I ping on the map. So you just left click and hold down, and it'll just do a big circle in whatever color is next to your name down here in the lower left, which I usually do like a bright neon color so that you can see it against darkness. You can change it to whatever color you want. If they can't see that circle, then I have them zoom out completely, and I ping again. If they can then see it, they move to that spot. They can usually see because they're in the room with the torch now or whatever. If they still can't see it, then you can start troubleshooting. It's probably a connection issue. You can swap maps again. So pinging is a pretty good way to get everyone on the same page in the same area. Players can also ping as well, and that's helpful. You know, if there's like a rogue that's going ahead and is like, okay, like I'm in this next area that's dark, like, you know, move over here with me. So they can do that too. Duplicating character sheets to let people level ahead of a session is super helpful. So like, if there's a possibility that they might level during the game, it depends on what type of GM you are. If you like leveling your characters in game with them, great. If you don't and you want that done ahead of time, then if you duplicate the character sheets, then you've got these copies down here, and you make it very clear to them that they only edit these copies, and then during the next session, you play as your originals. They level, they rest, whatever, and then you start playing as the copies, and then after the game, when everything's done, the GM, you go in and you delete the original ones, and you only play off the copies. You rename them so they're not the copies anymore, and now you have a newly leveled character sheet for everyone. Super quick way to transition. Through that, I also found that it's actually just generally much easier if you are a GM that audits your character sheets when they level to audit it like that, because in Roll20 there's no like save history. You can't really see how they changed the sheet. So if you have a second sheet down here, pop them both open and change so that they actually fit together. on the screen, then you can compare. Cool, like his hit points is like, you know, his hit points are 15 higher. They can't be 15 higher, so what went wrong? Kind of thing. And it says it very clearly right here, you know, the original, the copy. So that has been like a super time and frustration saver for me when I'm checking my players' sheets when they level. Okay, so another random tip. The Ethernet cable, like plugging it into my laptop made a huge difference. I have like super fast Wi-Fi, but when I am doing voice and video and Roll20, the combination eats up that bandwidth. So like it solved 90% of my problems when I just ran an Ethernet cable across the house to my laptop. If you can't connect to a modem, the modem or a router, because it's too far or whatever, I would highly consider getting a Wi-Fi extender with an Ethernet port. They're like 10 to 20 bucks. You plug it in closer to your computer and get a short Wi-Fi, short Ethernet cable, plug it into the Wi-Fi extender, plug it into your laptop, and it makes a world of a difference when you're using Roll20. Another random tip, blue light filter glasses. I prep, like personally, I prep for hours and hours before a game. So when I swapped from like books and paper sheets and wet erase maps to the website, it killed my eyes, and I had headaches before the session like even started. So I got like a cheap pair of $5 blue light filter glasses, and it totally changed my life. And I realized that my mood during games was way better. Another one, if a player has like a bad connection one week, they're just like in a friend's house or whatever, and their Wi-Fi there is shitty, you can ask if you can control their sheet, and it'll save so much time. Like if you just pull it up for them, and like clearly give them like creative, you know, choices or whatever. Like they're like, you know, I want to use this specific attack, or I want to use this skill. That's great. They're in control still, but you just click on it for them. Because like waiting 2 minutes every time someone needs to use a weapon, it kills the game. So if they're okay with it, controlling their character sheets, it really doesn't take that much time away from you, especially if they're making all of the decisions. If 2 players are in one spot, like a couple that live together, consider having them play from one account. This is actually happening in both of my campaigns now. It takes up less bandwidth, like significantly. You don't have to like mess around with like one of them is muted, so there's no feedback and all that stuff. And as long as you give whichever account is on Roll20 permission to both players' sheets and tokens, it's super smooth. And it just like it made a world of difference when we switched to that instead of them like both fighting on laptops sitting right next to each other. This one is one that I learned recently. When you have a character sheet up, or anything, a handout, whatever, so you can double click on the title area or like anywhere on this top row, and it'll just minimize it, get it out of the way. You don't have to close it and wait for it to reload if you need to open it. When you place anything, handout, character sheet, whatever, on a map, and you size it and you put it on a certain area of the map, and then minimize it, you can minimize it and put that like slightly transparent minimized title wherever you want on the map. It'll stay there, and even if you move it, when you click on it again and expand it, it will come back wherever you placed it on the map. So this is super helpful when I'm running like a complicated combat and I don't want to keep closing all the maps. So like I can now see all my tokens still, I can move my goblins, but I still have their information up here, so I can roll their stuff while I'm moving their tokens. It moves much faster. I tend to like prep a little ahead and be like, okay, they're probably going to fight these 5 or 6 different types of creatures. Let me open up their sheets, lay them out up here out of the way of the map, and just like be ready for it so that your players aren't waiting for you to pull up the sheets as you go along. Some things that I found helpful to tell the players when they start. So like the message that I sent to them when I send the link to join the game, I basically say like, here's the link to join the game. Once you do, I can add you as a person who can edit your character sheet. Only you and I will be able to edit it. Once you click on the link and sign up for an account, it'll take you to the game page. And then like just give them like a very like basic directions to like how to get in. Like click on launch session. It'll request permission for video and mic, grant it permission, and then, you know, tell them how to get to the journal page, open up the character sheet, and that they'll be able to edit it. Just so it's not like overwhelming the first time that they log on and they have no idea what to do. Some stuff that I asked my players, like what were really helpful things that they knew from the beginning, because I just gave them like a little mini document about stuff that I found that was helpful. The shift click and being able to like select multiple tokens at once, especially for like dancing lights and animal companions, was super helpful. Telling everyone from the start that Chrome is the best for Roll20 makes a big difference. And I personally, I encourage them to do research when they ask like harder questions. If they're like, you know, how do I roll initiative? I'm like, go to your character sheet, it's right here. But if they're like, how do I add a buff macro for blah, blah, blah? I'm like, you know, can you go to this page and look it up while I'm continuing to run the game, so that your player, the other players aren't waiting while you're looking stuff up, but also they find stuff, learn, like become more comfortable searching for answers on Roll20, because it is not your responsibility to know everything about Roll20 for your players. And then they'll tell the other players as you're like running stuff and as they're looking stuff up, and then all your players and you often will have new information about how Roll20 works. So like making sure that your players are like comfortable knowing that like they can search for answers and implement them and change things on their own is like super helpful. It takes a lot of weight off of you. That's it for random tips. The last thing for the class is free versus pro versus premium setup subscriptions for Roll20. With the free account, you get pretty limited but like substantial upload storage. Compendium sharing, so like whatever system you use, if it's integrated in Roll20, you'll be able to use the compendium and get those, you know, spells and all that kind of stuff for one game and up to 5 players for that game. And you can do the listings to look for a group to play with. For $4.99 a month, it suddenly becomes like way better. More room, no ads. This is like all players in your games can create content and share them with each other. Dynamic lighting seriously makes it so much cooler for your characters, your players, to like move around the map and like actually explore new rooms room by room. You don't get some of this stuff yet. The character vault, like I'm running 2 Rise of the Rune Lord campaigns, so transferring NPC characters between the games is very helpful. Compendium sharing gets bigger, 3 games up to 10 players, and then you get to pro, and unless you're like really comfortable with computer languages and macros and developing stuff like that, you don't really need it, but you get access to the like Roll20 API, which there are a ton of like pre-written API things in the library, or the sandbox as they call it, that you can add into your game. So you don't necessarily have to write stuff your own, but like you do have to understand a lot of computer language to be able to even like get anything out of that. The reason why I have pro is the custom character sheets. I know one of you mentioned you're using a 5e because they don't have the Pugmire character sheets, but you can, with the custom character sheets, I can send like I can do a video separately and send it, but you can basically like start with the 5e character sheet and then edit it to like match the Pugmire or whatever you want. And that's $9.99 a month, or you can pay it all at once for like a little bit of a discount. So that is the class.